sugar-coated pork buns. To get started, I'll make my marinade. I'm gonna combine 1/3 cup each of soy sauce, rice wine, hoisin, and honey. And this marinade is gonna add so much flavor into that pork. Rice wine, which adds a bright pop of acidity. Hoisin sauce, which adds like a dark, sweet, caramelly flavor. And honey for extra sweetness. I really enjoy how sweet and sticky this filling gets. 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame oil, which adds the most amazing toasty nuttiness. 1.5 teaspoons of Chinese 5-spice powder, which has star anise, cinnamon, fennel seeds, Szechuan peppercorns, and cloves. I'll grate in some ginger. Okay. And lastly, I'll smash 6 cloves of garlic and add them in. I'll just use the blunt end of my knife to do that. I'll whisk this to combine. All right, now I'll add the pork. I have 2.5 pounds of pork shoulder here. It's boneless and it's been cut into 1-inch slices, and that's gonna help that marinade get all up in there. I'll coat it on both sides and zhuzh it around. This is smelling insane. So these pork buns are inspired by pork buns that my dad and I had when we were in Hong Kong. I'll cover this up and let it marinate in the fridge for a few hours. Then I'll roast it at 350 degrees for 50 minutes until it's lightly caramelized on all sides. And while the pork is cooking, I'm gonna thicken up the marinade and turn it into a saucy element for the filling. I've got some cornstarch, which will help the mixture thicken, and I'm gonna pour most of the marinade into my pan. And I'll bring it to a simmer. And then with the reserved marinade, I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and whisk it to combine. And this is gonna create a slurry which just helps the cornstarch incorporate smoothly and evenly. And I'll cook this, stirring until it thickens, almost the consistency of a gravy. Oh yeah, this is nice and thick. I'll remove this from the heat and allow it to cool, and in the meantime, I'm gonna work on my buns. To get started, I'm gonna activate my yeast. I'll sprinkle 1 packet right into some warm water. And yeast feasts on sugar, so I'm gonna add a pinch of sugar too to help it along. I'll give this a swirl, and then I'm gonna allow it to sit until it gets foamy on top. And in the meantime, I'll mix up my dry ingredients. In my mixer bowl here, I'm gonna add 1 cup of cake flour, and then 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And if you don't have cake flour, you can just use all-purpose flour. And 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. I'll stir this to combine. And now I'll stir up my wet ingredients. My yeast is looking foamy and happy. I'm gonna add 1 large egg to this. This will add some richness. 1/2 cup of whole milk, which will help make the dough tender. And 3 tablespoons of neutral oil, which will add that moistness to the dough. I'll whisk to combine. Okay, the wet ingredients are combined. I'll add them to the dry ingredients. And I'll let this go until it starts to form a ball. This dough is looking great. It's smooth and still a little sticky, which is exactly what I want. I'm stretching the dough into a ball. I want it to have a nice taut surface so that it rises evenly. I'll grab a clean bowl. I'll drizzle it with some oil so that the dough doesn't stick. I'll put the dough in top down, smush it around, and then turn it back over so that it's coated completely with the oil. I'll cover it in plastic and let it rise until it's doubled in size. I've already made the dough and it's doubled in size, and here I've got my pork that has cooked beautifully in its sweet and salty marinade. I'll add it to my marinade that has cooled and thickened, and it'll make it extra saucy. Now I'll fold it together with the marinade to make sure each piece is coated in that goodness. Looks great. I'll grab my bun dough now. My dough has risen, it's all puffy and happy, and now I'll turn it out onto my surface. Oh, it's so soft and fluffy. I'll divide my dough into 9 equal pieces. And I'll take a piece of dough and roll it out into a circle that's about 5 inches wide or 1/4 inch thick. And I'll scoop a pile of filling right into the center. Now I'll gather the edges and pinch them shut to seal to lock all that goodness in. Just like that. I'll continue on shaping these now, and while they rest, I'll make the crunchy sugar topping. To get started, I'll combine 2/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour and 2/3 of a cup of powdered sugar into my food processor, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. I'll pulse to combine, and add 6 tablespoons of softened, unsalted butter. And I'll pulse this until it's crumbly. I'll add an egg and blend this into a paste. I'm gonna grab a piping bag and my buns. These are some good-looking buns. Okay, now the easiest way to top these with the paste is to put it into a piping bag. So I have a piping bag fitted with a round tip, and it's standing up in my measuring cup. I'll fold the sides up. And starting in the center of a bun, I'm gonna pipe on a swirly shape, like that. These are ready for the oven now. I'll bake them at 350 for about 20 minutes until they're golden brown. This is gonna be the best my buns have ever looked. Oh yeah, these look perfect. They're golden, and that sugary coating is gonna be so crispy and sweet. Still steamy on the inside.
And crunchy on the top.
Mm-hmm.